Alright guys, before we get into the podcast, let's get through the rigmarole first. Today's podcast is a special podcast because obviously this is the first podcast we're doing now that the season is over. So it's going to be a little bit different. The first segment, we're still going to do the news. The second segment, we're going to review the season as a whole and really go through what went wrong for the Dolphins, what they need to do better this offseason, and really correct some of the mistakes that they made that kind of came back to bite them during this season. And then obviously the final segment of the show, we're still going to answer fan questions. So it's basically the same except the middle part. Obviously I'm very excited for this offseason. So let's get through the news because there's a lot to cover. Obviously I haven't done a video in a while, so we're going to go through a lot that happened during the last 2 weeks of Dolphinsville. First news story. Mike Pouncy likely back in 2018. Mike Pouncey's severe hip injury, one that he said will induce a hip replacement at some point in the not too distant future. One prominent doctor said that his career was over. The seventh-year center said via Adam Beasley of the Miami Herald. However, the Dolphin center made it through 15 games this season, despite Pro Football Focus grading Pouncey's performance as the league's number 20, the 25th best center in the league. Beasley notes the snapper is one of Adam Gase's favorites and can be expected back in 2018. I actually didn't listen. Pro Football Focus to me is so skewed in some ways because they really are they are super analytically based. So you can take that how you want. I'm more of an eye test person. What I see is obviously what I believe and what I think of a player. Like, I don't look at stats and be, oh, that player's great, because obviously context is everything in the NFL. One receiver might have inflated stats one year because of maybe he has a better quarterback he's playing for, or, you never know what it is. Or one great player has a down year, like DeAndre Hopkins. When Deshaun Watson was on the field, he was one of the best receivers in the NFL. When he wasn't, he disappeared. So that kind of stuff is how you look at football and how you choose to diagnose what you see. I don't put too much stock into that, but yeah, it is very interesting to move on from that because it's not huge news. Two things that I thought were really interesting in that report. Number one, it's one of Adam's favorite players, and we've heard that a lot. Hopefully he's making that decision not with his heart but with his brain. Obviously that's hurt him his tenure so far here in Miami. He's made some decisions where he's played players that he likes as opposed to players that he thinks probably can get the job done best. So hopefully he's making that decision with his head, not his heart, because you can't do that in the NFL. We've seen that with Bill Belichick. He's made some serious ripping the Band-Aids off with some of his players in the past. And he's been right every single time. So sometimes, I'm not saying Mike Pouncey's at the end of his career, because I think he's got at least 2 or 3 more years of Pro Bowl left in him. But hopefully there's not a landmine in the future, because him going down, if we're not well prepared enough for him to go down, that could really hurt our season. So hopefully this offseason we take the precautions we need to, or Adam sees the landmine coming and he gets out from under it before it blows up. So I hope that's not what's happening, because we cannot go into another season and rely and put all our stock into one offensive lineman, and then he gets hurt, and then we're like, oh, what do we do? And then, same thing with the unicorn situation. We could never rely on Brandon Albert to be healthy, or we could never, Juwan James still has health issues. So that's something that's really plagued us, and hopefully we can get out from under that before it blows up in our face. All right. So this next news story is concerning GM Chris Grier. And this is what he said about having the 11th pick in the draft. He says, this is a quote, "We're going to take advantage of it." This article is from Dolphins Daily of the Palm Beach Post. The Miami Dolphins have the 11th pick in the NFL draft. And with that comes great pressure and responsibility. The main most direct responsibility for making the choice, the man most direct for making the choice is Chris Grier, and he welcomes the task. Chris Grier said, quote, "For me, the draft is always a great opportunity. he said Wednesday. Like I've told you before, I hate when people say it's a weak draft in this area and stuff. It's an excuse because you don't want to go out there and work or try to find guys. So for us, we'll go through our process. I don't want to be picking 11th. I know these guys don't want to be. He's referring to the performance, not that he doesn't want to be, like he's upset that we had a down season, but it is what it is. We're 6-10. We're going to take advantage of it and draft good players. We'll work through it and find the right person for us. Greer did not discount anything, including the possibility of taking a quarterback with the 11th pick, which is going to be a huge theme and a huge topic of conversation throughout this podcast. We're going to go deep into that with the 11th pick realistically. Miami needs help at offensive guard, offensive tackle, linebacker, running back, and tight end. Okay, well, for one, I agree with guard. I do not agree with tackle. We do not need a tackle. Linebacker, I agree with, of course. Running back, depth, yes. And tight end, absolutely. And then he goes on to say perhaps cornerback, safety. We do not need a corner. I don't think we do. A safety, I don't think we need a safety. I like TJ and Rashad. Not enough to go pick a safety that high. And defensive end. I wouldn't mind drafting a defensive end that high. I think pass rushers are obviously very valuable. So really, defensive tackle may be the only position really Miami does not need to explore in free agency and the draft. Well, we could argue differently than that, depending on what the Dolphins decide to do with Sue. The Dolphins will almost have an extra draft choice with the return of linebacker Raekwon McMillan, who did not play a snap after an injury in the preseason last season, which is unfortunate to say the least. Rookie defensive end Charles Harris had only 2 sacks in his first season. Cordrea Tankersley showed promise with his 11th start. One excellent late rounder was defensive tackle Devon Godchaux, who started 15 games along in Dominican Sue. But recent first rounder Laramie Tunsil, 13th pick in the 2016 draft, and Devontae Parker, 14th in the 2015 draft, and Juwan James, 19th in the 2014 draft, did not have the type of season management that management would have liked. So as Miami tries to relaunch itself in 2018, it's imperative that Greer and his staff choose the right players. No more crucial than the player they select at number 11. Why that was an important report, because it sounds like a bunch of trash and it's not inconsequential. Why that was important is because of the key thing that he said in that report. He did not discount on taking a quarterback. Last year, if you guys remember, we were all in on Tannehill. He actually had him and Mike Tannenbaum said basically the same thing, but Chris said something very telling. He said, or I think it was actually Mike who said it. He said that, Eli Manning wasn't great out the gate either. It took a while for him to develop. So he was basically comparing how he's comparing Tannehill's development to people like Steve Young, all those players who took a very long time to develop. Brett Favre, well, Brett didn't take that long to develop, but players who sat behind somebody for a while or just took a while and was a late bloomer, Kurt Warner, Rich Gannon, those kind of players. So he was comparing that. So they were basically saying, yeah, Tannehill's going to be our quarterback this year. They're not saying that this year, which I find very interesting. And I think everybody knows it. I mean, if the Dolphins really, and we're going to keep moving here because I don't want to just let the cat out of the bag just yet because we're going to get into it. But if the Dolphins really want to be different and really want to dominate and really want to move forward and do something that the Dolphins really haven't done in the last 20 years or however long it's been, for God's sake, since Marino left, to just change the franchise and change the outlook of the city and its players. They're going to have to make a move that they haven't made in a very long time. And, those come with tough decisions. And it's really not that tough of a decision when you think about it. If the Dolphins want to select a quarterback as high as that, or even trade up to get one, or trade up to get a high value player, I wouldn't mind it if we put all of our eggs in one basket and just threw it against the wall and hopefully something came out of that. Then I would be all for it, because I'm at this point as a Dolphins fan, I'm all in on taking risks. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But whatever it takes for us to win, I'm willing to do. And I think doing something like that is going to help this franchise. So it's a very big debate for Dolphins fans to have. This draft is going to be very interesting for the Dolphins as a whole. All right, This next news article is top 8 Miami Dolphin NFL draft targets in tonight's college football title game. So this should be interesting for you guys who are keeping very close eye on some of the prospects. Number 1, Georgia linebacker. Number 3, Roquan, or however you say his name, Smith. Projected first rounder, sideline to sideline explosiveness, 3 down capable. He can pressure the quarterback and cover. Yes, please. Yeah, so he's just saying I want him. Increased the stock with a remarkable effort against Oklahoma in the college football playoff semifinals. Speed, youth, Raekwon and Raekwon, both Raekwons, just sound good, doesn't it? So yeah, I love him, and it's about crap time we find a leader of this defense, a guy who sets the tone, who goes sideline to sideline. That would change our defense completely. It would improve our defense. It would elevate it to the next level if we selected somebody like him. I'm all in for that, man. I love him to death. I think that's who's most likely going to be the Dolphins' pick, and I think he has a really bright future in the NFL. Alabama, and this is interesting too. Alabama's Minkah Fitzpatrick. We've seen safeties fall out of the top 10 and even the top 5 that we thought that were going to go into the top 5. When you think about last year, Malik Hooker, I could have never envisioned. I don't think anybody could have. Reuben Foster was a different story because that became more and more clear because of the injury. But Malik Hooker, the fact that he dropped out of the top 10, I mean, my God, I could have never. I mean, he was getting comparisons to Ed Reed because of his ball skills and his ability to just run around in the open field. And, you know, Minkah is a great player. So if he fell out of the top 10, I wouldn't be surprised. So, yeah, that's another player that you guys should be working at. In his description, projected first rounder, he probably won't be available when the Dolphins pick at 11 is what I was saying. But Fitzpatrick is our new age safety. He can play close to the line of scrimmage or deep. He can cover, but also has the size and strength to hold up in the NFL game. Would allow coordinator Matt Burke to unleash Fitzpatrick, TJ McDonald, and Rashad Jones, which is a very interesting way to look at it. And I wouldn't be surprised if he fell out of the top 10. Alabama's receiver Calvin Ridley, who I love, projected first rounder. Why would the Dolphins take a receiver when it's obvious it's not an obvious position of need? Well, maybe you decide to let Jarvis Landry go, or maybe you decide to trade Devontae Parker. Ridley is a Fort Lauderdale native who compares to former Bama receiver Amari Cooper. I actually think he's better. I think he's more consistent. So I like Calvin a lot. He has injuries, but I like him. Some of the other players, Nick Chubb, to get some of the Georgia players. I love Nick Chubb. I think if you talk about if you're a northern team, a cold weather football team that likes to run the ball, Nick Chubb is your guy. Georgia linebacker for some of the other Georgia players. Lorenzo Carter, very good player. If you want, I'm gonna skip over him because we're kind of getting in here. Georgia, another Georgia player, running back Sony Michel, who I love, and I think that he could fall to the second round or even later than that. Projected second rounder, Michel has improved his draft stock this season and may be taken ahead of Chubb because of his speed and elusiveness. I think he fits. We need Chubb because Sony was pretty much like Kenyon, and I think Kenyon's probably a better runner than Sony is, but he's a great player nonetheless. Michel was a star at Plantation American Heritage and has emerged as a complete back in college. He can run inside and outside and catch the ball. Very similar to Drake in that respect. So those are some of the players you guys got to watch tonight. And maybe you guys are listening to this after the game. So hopefully you guys were impressed by some of those players there. Because there's a lot of, seriously, like I said, Smith and Fitzpatrick, both of those players could be Dolphins, like seriously, especially if Fitzpatrick falls out of the top 10. I would not be surprised. It's not even that we need a safety, but he probably would be the best player available, obviously. I mean, some people have him as a top 3 pick in the draft. So and we saw what Jamal Adams has done for the Jets this season firsthand, so we know what a great safety can bring. So I especially from the SEC. All right, so this is next. Our new story is 5 things the Dolphins must do to improve this offseason. And this is from Omar Kelly. So I thought we would go through this. Improve the linebacker position. Miami was deficient against the run and pass. Yeah, obviously, and the intelligence. I don't even get me started on how many times times broken plays have lost us games. So many times. Against the run and pass here, meaning this group doesn't have many impactful plays. The Dolphins need 2 new linebackers. Assume strong side linebacker Lawrence Timmons, $8.2 million, won't return. That's how much I think he's gonna make. Timmons 84 tackles, third on the team, which is a huge disappointment. His playing decreased for a good reason, but that's why some of the numbers are skewed. But he did not perform to the level that he was playing at the beginning of the year. So it is what it is. Wasn't a difference maker and isn't worth the price. Rookie middle linebacker Raekwon McMillan knee returns, and as does veteran weak side linebacker Kiko Alonso, 115 tackles, second on the team, who was a liability in pass coverage, which is a very, weak is a very weak word to describe how bad he was in pass coverage this offseason or this season. His God, don't even get me started. The backup middle linebackers Chase Allen and Mike Cole, and outside linebackers Stephon Anthony and Neville Hewitt, among others, are okay. I love Stephon. He's great in pass coverage, and he makes plays. I like him on. Okay, but Miami must find better players. Among Alonzo, Timmons, Hole, Allen, Anthony, Rayma, Aluga, well, Ray's not on the team anymore. The linebackers linebackers combined for 15 tackles for loss, 1 sack, no interceptions, 4 forced fumbles, and 1 recovered fumble. Figure the Dolphins need someone to replace Timmons as a starter and perhaps an alternative to Alonzo in pass coverage. Absolutely. We don't have to get somebody to start over Kiko, because we could just get a sub-package guy in obvious passing situations, because Kiko's not, he could be on the field on first and second down. He's fine. But he's also not a thumper. So I wouldn't be opposed to just completely replacing him, because he's not a physical guy in the running game, and he's infamous at this point among Dolphins fans for filling the wrong hole. So, that's something we hear Matt Burke talk about constantly with him. Acquire a running back to play alongside Kenyon Drake. A strong running game remains the best thing Miami could do for Tannehill. Assume Damian Williams, $1.7 million last season, a possible free agent, won't return. Gase has said he favors a 2-back system because of the wear and tear running backs take in this league. Drake, 644 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns, 239 receiving, and 1 touchdown. He also said he likes a 2-back system, something that Kenyon said that he did in high school and college. The new addition could come from the draft or free agency, but he must be versatile, meaning he can run the ball, catch the ball out of the backfield, and pass protect. That gives Miami play-calling versatility without a personnel change. He's absolutely right, and that's something that J.J. really hampered us, and one of the bigger reasons he was traded. The style that the running back needs to have, Adam Gase prefers inside zone runs to outside zone runs, or vice versa, and size, big back, small back, won't be important. Just because versatility is the most important, as Omar Kelly says here. Find a pass rusher, which he's right. Miami thought it found a bookend pass rusher opposite Cameron Wake, 10.5 sacks, but rookie first round Charles Harris, 2 sacks, was a disappointment, and the same could be said for veteran defensive end Andre Branch. So the search continues. I'm not ready to give up on Charles because he had a lot of pressures. I'm not giving up on him that fast. This isn't likely to be a first-round pick, but Miami already has a pair of high-priced veterans in Wake and Branch, so don't look for a big-name free agent. This addition could be a mid-round draftee or moderately priced veteran that the hope would be to be among Wake, Harris, Branch. The new addition, the Dolphins could find 2 impactful pass rushers. You can absolutely do that in the later rounds, and that's something the Dolphins actually have had success with, is finding defensive linemen in the later rounds. You think about recent or past ones like Derek Shelby and Olivier Vernon and players like that who were very good players for us. And I'm not saying OV is I think he can be a dominant player in this league, but Derek was just a really good role player. But you can find quality players, and I love Cameron Malvo, the kid out of Houston. I thought he had a very nice end of the season. But again, you don't have to take one early on. Drafted backup, and I'm not ready to give up on Charles Harris either. Drafted backup quarterback, and this is something that's this huge theme in this podcast. This is tricky because if you want to draft a quality quarterback, which means the high rounds, but you seemingly not in the position to use a high draft pick on someone unlikely to contribute in 2018, whatever, it's that time. Sacks have been down last 2 seasons. Having said that, the Dolphins also must be aware that Tannehill and fellow quarterbacks Jay Cutler and Matt Moore have all missed games due to injury in the last 2 seasons. That's one reason it would be wise to aggressively groom a younger quarterback at that position. The other reason is that while you'd like to believe Tannehill's knee will not be an issue, the Dolphins better have a backup plan. More a possible free agent David Fells and Brandon Doughty probably aren't good enough. It's important to plan ahead at the NFL's most important position. He's absolutely correct about that, and that's what makes this draft so interesting. And we're gonna get into some more of that as we go along, but we got to keep going through the news because there is a lot to go through here. Miami Dolphins could use TJ McDonald to be a deceptive weapon or a deceptive hybrid weapon in 2018. The last time Miami Dolphins defensive coordinator Matt Burke held a press conference, he was asked once again about what it's going to take to slow down opposing tight ends. Only the Oakland Raiders allowed more receiving yards to tight ends, and only the New York Giants allowed more touchdowns to opposing tight ends this season, according to Pro Football Reference, which has been an issue for the last 4 years. Something must change. For the second half of the season, safety TJ McDonald, ramping up from a half-season suspension, was most often asked to play center field, while safety Rashad Jones played closer to the line of scrimmage. Using McDonald more often in a hybrid safety linebacker role in 2018 could be considered. Matt Burke says, quote, "It could be. McDonald has, Matt Burke says, quote, "McDonald has obviously got a skill set that fits that type of role. Obviously, he's a bigger safety. Again, the issue you get into is if you have small safeties and put them down there, maybe they're too small to play in the running game. If you have linebackers that can run with the tight ends, that's just sort of the contrast. He definitely has the skill set that we feel he can utilize, which is very interesting." In 2016, McDonald played for the Rams, who fell to the Falcons in a playoff game on Saturday. In that game, you might have noticed McDonald's former teammate Mark Barron playing linebacker. He obviously used to play safety. Barron was a highly drafted safety from Alabama, but has had a successful conversion to. He played safety in Alabama and obviously converted to a linebacker after playing safety for many years and just didn't work out. But again, TJ's a good safety though. You may have also noticed Falcons linebacker Deion Jones, a former LSU standout. Jones is a classic example of what NFL defensive coordinators now crave, a player who is physical enough to stop the run, but also athletic enough to cover pass receivers, which is 100% true. Falcons coach, and to add another one to that, Dan Buchanan, who was the original one, and when he's healthy, he's one of the best in the league as well. Dan Quinn utilizes Jones in various roles, depending on down and distance. It's something Burke wasn't able to do often enough with McDonald last season, in large part because of his injuries due to safety Nate Allen, Michael Thomas, and Mo Smith. In particular, Smith is a player to watch in 2018, as the organization has relatively high hopes for the former undrafted rookie from Alabama and Georgia. They think he'll be watching Monday's. Think he'll be watching Monday night's national championship game. So that's interesting. We're gonna move on from that because that's about it. We've talked about this before on the podcast. TJ has the perfect. He's the perfect archetype for that type of a player. He's actually bigger than players like Deion Jones and Buchanan and Mark Barron. He's probably about the same size. He's actually probably bigger than Mark Barron. He's a big dude. I think he's a better safety than he is a linebacker. I don't know if he's a very athletic guy, but I don't know. We'll have to see. I honestly don't know. If he can be that coverage guy we're looking for. I think he can be, but we'll see. Top 10 Miami Dolphins who aren't a part of the problem going in 2018. This is the next news story. Number 10, safety Michael Thomas. If Thomas gets a good offer as an unrestricted free agent this year, the Dolphins will have to think hard about matching it because he's a highly valuable in their secondary and on special teams. Pro Football Focus ranked him as the best special teams player in the NFL this year, and he was solid for Miami when he needed to spot work at safety. He's always been our best special team since he got here. Kicker Cody Parkey. Don't take the Jupiter Juggernaut for granted. He matched Jay Feely's single-season franchise record by making 91.3%, 21 out of 23 of his field goals this His only misses were from 48 and 50 yards. He was also excellent on kickoffs, and is the only kicker known to have successfully pulled off 4 onside kicks in a season. That stat tracks back to 1997. The offense needs the security of being able to take the 3 points anytime at any range, and the Dolphins should move quickly to re-sign him, which is a good point. Cody had a really good season. Number 8, Kiko Alonso. This is interesting. Alonso is a popular target for disappointment in the fan base, especially after signing a 4-year, $28.9 million extension last year. He had 115 tackles and 2 forced fumbles this year, which was a bit of a drop-off from the 6 turnovers he got his hands on in 2016. The bottom line on Alonso is he's a valuable talent, and the coaching staff needs to hone in on the best way to use him. I don't believe that. I honestly don't believe that. I do not think he does anything well at the linebacker position. He's not a thumper. He's not physical enough to play at the line of scrimmage and play in the box and dominate the tackle box. He can't do it. We've seen it. And he's not good in pass coverage. So I don't understand what he does well at all. And he's definitely not worth that contract extension. Number 7, Kenyon Drake. Getting Drake at number 73 overall in the 2016 draft is looking like a smart pickup. J.J. was very good at times, but Drake is much more the style of running back Gase likes to have in his offense, and he proved that once again when he got his shot after the Ajayi trade. Drake averaged 94.6 yards from scrimmage in the games that he played. The 29 catches he had during that span were more than Ajayi totaled in his entire 2016 Pro Bowl season, which is very interesting. Again, that's obvious stuff. You can see that with your eyes. Kenyon just fits the offense more, and the play calling completely changed. We had less negative plays when Jay left, which is obvious because people were just loading the box up against us and be like, all right, hand the ball off. Mike Pouncy is number 6. As the Dolphins continue to mix and match and hope for the best of their offensive line, they're fortunate to have Pouncy as a reliable player in the middle. As long as his health is good, which is promising after he played all 16 games and 93.6% of the offensive snaps this year, some renovating is necessary, but Pouncy at $9 million next year sounds just fine. 5 is Rashad Jones. For a second straight year, Jones made people wonder whether he's the Dolphins' most important offensive player. He looked worthy of the 5-year, $60 million extension they gave him before the season, and totaled a team-high 122 tackles to go with 2 interceptions, 3 fumble recoveries, and 2 touchdowns. And his shoulder held up with no issues after undergoing rotator cuff surgery the year before. Rashad is... he's a god. I mean, he's one of the best players on the team. Continues to be that super consistent player. He gets in trouble sometimes. Like, he's not the smartest safety in the world, but that's why he plays at the line of scrimmage. But other than that, he's a great player. Wide receiver Kenny Stills is number 4. This will go down as one of Vice President Mike Tannenbaum's best personnel moves. He got Stills for a minimal price in a trade. He developed well in the first 2 seasons and then re-signed for a reasonable price, heading into his mid to late 20s. Stills' strong year in 2017 helped mitigate an underwhelming season from Devontae Parker. He's absolutely right. 3, and again, this is players that are not to blame for the 2016 season. 3, defensive end Cameron Wake. The Dolphins might try to secure Wake's 2019 season. Wake's 2019 season sometime in the next few months. And anyone who thought he was done after the torn Achilles tendon in 2015 has been proven completely wrong after he put up 22 sacks, 65 tackles, and 5 forced fumbles in the last 2 seasons. He has also had no trouble hitting the threshold for the $1 million playing time bonus this year. Wake looks like he's going to do this at age 40, and that's big for Miami. Number 2, wide receiver Jarvis Juice Landry. Forget for a moment that Landry and the Dolphins seem to be playing hardball heading into the contract talks as he hits unrestricted free agency. It's not profitable for them to say this right now, but he's their best offensive player. He produces no matter who's playing quarterback, and he just broke his own franchise record for catches in a season with 112. Ask Tannehill if he wants this guy back next year. Everybody in that building loves him to death. They understand dude, he's literally the most consistent player on the team. And that is something that the Dolphins have struggled to be, is consistent. But Jarvis, every game, he's there. He shows up to the stadium. Number 1 is Ndamukong Suh. He's a luxury the Dolphins probably couldn't afford, but he's here and he's dominant. At 30, he was still one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL. It's not even necessary to get into all the details of how great he is. Everyone knows it. The only issue for Miami is he's scheduled to make $26.1 and $28.1 million salary cap hits for next 2 seasons, which is the team can try to reconstruct his contract. The only player I would say that doesn't deserve to be on that list that we just went through is Kiko. I don't believe in Kiko. I've lost all faith in the man. If anything, he's a okay role player at best, and he's very hard to cover up. So I think it's best for the Dolphins to somehow move on from that. But obviously, people brought up the point of he's already paid off. He's not hurting the cap. Might as well keep him around anyway. But at the same time, he kind of hurts the team. This next news story, the Dolphins have hired a new offensive coordinator. The Miami Dolphins reportedly hired Dowell Loggins as their new offensive coordinator on Wednesday, according to NFL Network's Ian Rappaport. Loggins will take over as head coach Adam Gase's right-hand man after spending the last 2 years in the same role with the Chicago Bears. Rappaport added former Dolphins offensive coordinator Clyde Christensen is likely to remain with the team in a transition to another role. According to Miami Herald's Armando Salguero, Gase will continue to call the offensive plays. No surprise there. The move represents a reunion for Gase and Loggins, who were on John Fox's staff with the Bears in 2015. Loggins was the quarterback coach, while Gase was in as the offensive coordinator before making the move to South Florida. Looking ahead, the two will try to overhaul the team's scheme following a disappointing campaign in 2017. The Dolphins ranked 18th in passing yards, 29th in rushing, while managing 17.6 points per game. Only 4 teams, the Bears, Colts, Giants, and Cleveland Browns, scored at lower rates. To improve upon those ranks, the Dolphins will need to be active in the personnel department during an offseason that could be filled with change. Not only has Gase said quarterback Ryan Tannehill is expected to return to his starting post under center after missing the 2017 season because of a torn ACL, but Miami may have to target a workhorse running back to help stabilize the offense after J.J. was shipped to the Philadelphia Eagles at the trade deadline. And with slot receiver Maven Jarvis Landry as an impending unrestricted free agent, the Dolphins will likely have stiff competition when it comes to keeping him in tow. Yeah, so Dowell Loggins is a placeholder. This would be bigger news if we had like a defensive coach or a coach that doesn't call plays. Like, yeah, it's all right. I like him. Obviously, he has a very rich background. He's been a coach for some great organizations. If you look at the Bears' offense, it wasn't very good. They were mainly a running football team, but very creative calls, a lot of trick plays that worked, well-designed plays. Smart dude. He should come in and help. I love Clyde though, man. I think Clyde's a great coach. But Dowell, obviously, great relationship with Adam. We'll see where this goes. Again, he's going to be more of like a personnel coach. So this is basically like adding a wide receiver coach, But we do need that. We need better staff members. And I think he's a great addition to the staff. Let's see here. This next news story. Here's the bold move Dolphins front office can make to lift the team from mediocrity. So this is very interesting. This report comes from the Miami Herald. Fans of 23 other NFL teams have cheered a playoff victory since Miami fans last did on December 30th, 2000. The sad company we keep: Bengals, Bills, Browns, of course, and Lions. The franchise of Don Shula and Dan Marino have frittered from perfection to dysfunction. Every time we think we see the end of it, something goes wrong. And so there was a Groundhog Day feel last week when Vice President of Football Operations Mike Tannenbaum, General Manager Chris Greer, and Coach Adam Gase sat gloomy at the dial for annual season post-mortem, and the movie Bill Murray shuts off the morning alarm and awakens to the same old thing. Rinse and repeat. The Dolphins need to retire that mocking fight song before when you say Miami. Okay, all right, skip that. But I do know this. in a quarterback-rich 2018 draft this April, if Miami believes it can get somebody better than Ryan Tannehill with the 11th overall pick, or with a strategic trade down, then by all means do it. Yeah, I know so many other needs. True, that's the obviously that's the result of a 6-10 season, but name a more important position than the quarterback. Turning this thing around to get a dynamic quarterback. The 8 teams still alive today, the Super Bowl tournament, are led by 5-star quarterbacks in Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger, Matt Ryan, and Drew Brees. Carson Wentz would be in this category, but he was injured at the end of the season and replaced by journeyman Nick Foles. That means 3 teams found a way to success with less at the most important position. Marcus Mariota, Blake Bortles, and Case Keenum, who are entering the season, would have been in the Vikings' number 3 if Sam Bradford and Teddy Bridgewater were healthy. The lesson for Miami is that you've tried and failed attempting to win without a premier quarterback. Now comes the 2018 season, and what would be year 7 of wondering whether, it should be, I guess, year 6 or year 5 technically, since he's been hurt for the last 2 seasons, basically. Whether Ryan Tannehill is good enough to be capable for another year. He is fully formed, folks. He's okay. He's not bad, but he has not proved able to lift and carry a franchise. Now, Tannehill will turn 30 in the next training camp and is coming off a major left knee surgery. The Jay Cutler experiment might have made us miss Tannehill by comparison, but we should not assume a new and improved version will magically appear. There might be 5 first-round quarterbacks in April, and 3 could be there for Miami, like tantalizing gifts awaiting to be unwrapped. All but Southern California's Sam Darnold and UCLA's Josh Rosen will both go really high. The Dolphins could have a choice among Wyoming's Josh Allen of the ideal physique, or or either of the past 2 Heisman Trophy winners in Oklahoma's Baker Mayfield or Louisville's Lamar Jackson. I have seen all 3 mock draft in the overall top 10, but also lower. I guess he's saying they fall out of the top 10. If Miami has a chance at one of them, and a conviction he could be a long-term difference maker now or in a year, grab him. The upside could be worth the risk. Then you would have the choice of sticking with Tannehill another season as a bridge with the new guy developing, or exploring Tannehill's trade value, which I think could be worth a second-round pick to the right buyer. All right, so this is the thing that I was talking about. The common theme throughout this podcast is the fact that there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of rumors, there's a lot of hearsay, all around the league right now about who is going to take a quarterback. And should the Dolphins take a quarterback? I think if the Dolphins are going to do it, if they want, like this guy, or the guy who I don't know who wrote that article, but he brings up a good point, and I disagree with him on this. He said Sam Darnold and Josh Rosen are going to be gone way before the Dolphins even sniff them, right? Which is 100% correct. I don't think either one of the two are going to drop out of the top 10, because it doesn't matter how bad a quarterback is, teams are going to take the shot, and if they miss, they miss. If you're going to say, like he put it, go after a difference maker at the quarterback position. If you're going to do that, then don't take Lamar Jackson. Then don't take Josh Allen. Then don't take Baker Mayfield. Those 3 guys have so many question marks that it's almost not worth it. If you're going to do that, if you're going to take somebody like, okay, we're going to develop him for a while, there's people like Luke Falk, there's people like Mason Rudolph that you can take in the second round that I actually like better. I actually like Mason Rudolph better than I do Baker Mayfield or Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen. I like Luke Falk especially better than all 3 of those guys. Even Mason Rudolph, I actually like Luke Falk a lot. I think he can be a very good player. So you can do that in the second round. That is not worth the 11th pick, obviously, in my opinion. That would be crapping stupid if we did that. But if you're talking about somebody who you think can be a difference maker, there's only 2 of those guys in this draft who are bona fide, not surefire guys. There's actually 3, if you want to throw Saquon Barkley in there, who can really bring a superstar to your franchise. Then do it. Then go all in. But don't settle for those players just because, we should take a quarterback. No, man. Like, if you're going to do it, then do it. And if you're not, then you're not. So that's what I'm saying, and I think the Dolphins need to either they need to make a decision. There cannot be a middle road here. There can't be okay, we want to take a quarterback, but Sam's gone or Josh is gone, or we want to pick a difference maker, but those players are off the board. So let's select somebody else that we feel that is obviously high on our draft board. My point is, if the Dolphins think there's a difference maker in this draft, which in my opinion there's one huge difference maker, that's Saquon. And then there's obviously, if you want a quarterback and if you want to take a shot and there's a good shot that those two could be something special, those are the other choices, which is Sam Darnold or Josh Allen. Then shoot for the stars and go for it. Don't go for the middle road. That is my point. And I think if the Dolphins want to bring somebody like just a superstar to this roster, there's opportunity for that. And there's opportunity for that at the 11th overall pick. I'm not saying that the Dolphins have to trade up to the top 5 in the top 5 position to do that, because I do think Roquan or Raekwon, however you say his name, the kid out of Georgia, I think he can make a difference on this team. But I'm saying if you really want to make a difference, if you want to bring somebody in to this franchise that gets everybody talking, that has superstar potential, then go for it. Because I think the Dolphins should do that. And I'm not even necessarily saying, and listen to what I'm saying. I'm not even saying the Dolphins need to take a quarterback. I'm saying get somebody who can make a difference. And I think Saquon Barkley can 100% make a difference. 110%. I think he can do that. And I think there are teams out there that are willing to trade down from that top spot. I think the Giants would be totally willing to do that. They have Eli Manning. Hopefully they're still drunk with him and think he can still win them something. So there might be an opportunity there. The Browns are stupid. We know they make stupid mistakes. They love draft picks. How about throwing them a bone? But there is an opportunity to get somebody that we haven't had somebody like that in a very long time here in Miami. When was the last time? And I'm not saying that you have to always pick the most popular guy in the draft, because that's not what I'm saying. But we haven't had a draft in the last 10 years, really, where we've picked somebody that brought attention to this franchise. And I think it's important. I think to get the fans going, I think to get people in the stands, I think you have to take a player like that. And if the Dolphins are willing to do that, then I think they should. And I think there are 3 players, like I said, that can possibly do that for this franchise. And I think if you want to go in, you got to go all in. And if you want to take a quarterback, then do it. If Adam Gase really believes that one of these people can be a great quarterback in this league, then why the heck not? There's no point into not doing it. Listen, I love Tannehill. I love some of the players on this team. But I love winning even more. So whatever it takes for us to be a consistent, perennial playoff team that can get out of the depths of the AFC East and get out of this inconsistency that we've been dealing with for many years, then you have to do something different. I think taking a shot at this, just taking it, just shoot it, hopefully something sticks. I think that's something that the Dolphins need to do. Go after one of these superstars. Do it. There's no point. Just do it. I don't care if we lose the first round for next year. I don't care. I think there are 3 of those guys can seriously make a difference on this team. And if that's the whole point of the draft, is to get a player that makes a difference to improve your football team. And like I said, Chris Grier has done a very good job of finding talent in the later rounds. And that's something the Dolphins in previous regimes have been pretty good at. Jeff Ireland wasn't very good at it, but Dennis was pretty good at it. Obviously, he got Jarvis and a couple other players. Jeff, you can make an argument. He made some pretty good moves in the later rounds. Chris has done that his last 2 seasons. He's made some really solid picks in the later rounds. So I trust him he can find those players. But again, if the Dolphins really want to make a difference and do something special, they have the opportunity to do it. But there is no middle ground in that. And I think if they want to do it, then they should absolutely do it. I would have no issues, and I want to know what you guys think as fans. If we did, okay, let's say we gave up a first and a 2 for next year to get Josh or Sam or Saquon, I don't necessarily think I would be against it, because I think either one of those players is a franchise-changing player that can really help us for the future. I think I love Kenyon, but I think all of those 3 guys are special or have the opportunity to be special. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. I'm sick of the mediocrity as well. I'm sick of all of it. I think this team is too talented to be as inconsistent as it has been. And whatever it takes for us to win, I think the Dolphins need to do. So it is what it is. If there's a quarterback out there that is the next guy, is the next superstar, is the next Deshaun Watson, is the next Rookie of the Year, is the next Andrew Luck, then crap and go for it. Then do whatever you can to get him. And get him in the building. And again, if you want somebody who you can develop and sit behind Tannehill, there are players like that in this draft as well. There is a Mason Rudolph, there is a Luke Falk that you can draft in the later rounds who can potentially become something. And like obviously we've seen in the past with Derek Carr, and there have been many players like that over the years that have been hidden gems. But my point is, if Adam Gase truly believes that there is a quarterback in this draft that is a great player, then he needs to do what he needs to do to get that great player. That player in his building and in this franchise. I think it's so important at this point to do that, because I trust Adam Gase. I trust Adam's his decision making, especially when it comes to quarterbacks. He knows a good one when he sees one. So if he thinks he can find one, then he needs to pull the trigger. Just let me know what you guys think about that. But I think it's very interesting. It's kind of it's basically throughout the podcast. Just really read the tea leaves, because like I said, the front office was pretty blunt about, and Adam's been pretty blunt about it too, but it's less like that now, and I think it's due to the fact there are so many quarterbacks in this upcoming draft. I do think the Dolphins are taking a quarterback. I don't know what round they're doing it in, but I really truly believe they are taking one. Now, whether it's going after and shooting for the stars and getting a Josh Allen or Sam Darnold, or it's waiting for the second to third round to getting a Mason Rudolph or a Luke Falk, we'll see, but I think the Dolphins will take one. Let me know what you guys think. It's very interesting, and I think the Dolphins are going to do it, and it's going to be very interesting to see what they decide to do. All right, well, the podcast has run a little long because we went through a lot of things, and we're going to answer as many questions as we possibly can. But it is time for the fan Q&A, which I cannot wait for. And again, dude, this draft is getting me super hyped up, because my one last point before we move on to the fan Q&A, and I'm kind of repeating myself, but I do like a lot of the quarterbacks in this draft, and if the Dolphins, like I said, if Adam thinks he can find one, then do it. But I really like Luke Falk. I like Mason Rudolph a little bit. I think he has some issues. I like some of the later round guys as well. So if the Dolphins want to go that route, they can. But I definitely think they need to go quarterback. But I would not be opposed to shooting for the stars and getting a Saquon or any of those players, getting a Saquon or drafting a quarterback in the second round. All right, I'm down. This offense sucked. This offense wasn't that great, in 2016 either. It wasn't great, It got really good at the end of the year, which led us to the playoffs, but it wasn't great. Though adding a Saquon and Luke or a Mason or somebody who could possibly be something down the line would be tremendous for this franchise. All right, this question comes to the Gamer12345. He says, would you trade away Tony Lippett in the offseason for a draft pick? Depending on what it is, I don't know. I like Tony a lot. Depending on what we would get for him. The Gamer12345 says, do you think the Steelers or Jags can beat the Patriots in the playoffs? Brady struggles against pass rush, and both teams have a very good pass rush. I think the Jags have a very good pass rush because their back end plays complementary football. They're a great man-to-man team. The Steelers are not a great man-to-man coverage team. They tried to do it, and bless their heart, it actually worked if they weren't, obviously kind of got robbed there. So I don't know. I think I like the Steelers better. I like the Steelers more because Blake Bortles is utter trash. He's one of the worst quarterbacks I've ever seen in the playoffs. Seriously, I mean, that's his performance against the Bills. The Bills are lucky. Let's just put it that way. That they got David Fales and crap in Blake Bortles. They didn't take advantage of the Blake Bortles situation, but they're lucky that they didn't get their cheeks beat in the playoffs. So I like the Steelers because of the quarterback situation, and I like when they did play man, it did work. Obviously, Sean Davis dropped the game-winning interception, so it did work. People remember, Gronk went off. Yeah, because he's Gronk, he's going to do that. But there were plays that were left on the field that should have been made by the Steelers. Thomas the Kid TV says, I heard that the reason they started Fales so soon in the Bills game was because Cutler wanted to be taken out. What are your thoughts on that? Do you believe that the lack of leadership from Cutler was one of the main reasons for our disappointing season? Yeah, not his leadership, but the distraction that he brought to the franchise was very, very bad. Like, he brought a very big distraction to this team. He was one of the bigger ones. Obviously, there were other ones, like the Hurricane. Obviously, was a huge one, and obviously Lawrence Timmons and Adam Gase and Jay Ajayi, turmoil within the locker room, all that kind of stuff was just huge distractions that our young team clearly could not overcome, and obviously bad quarterback play is something that is very hard to overcome. Two great quotes after the Bills lost. They asked Stephen Ross what about the whole situation, what went wrong in the 2017 season. He had a great quote where he says, "You can't replace a good quarterback," and he's absolutely right. Tannehill, I love Tannehill to death. I think. Do I know that he could be a Dan Marino? No, I don't know that, but I know he's a good quarterback. Can he be a great quarterback? I think he can be, but he has yet to prove it. So there is still that unknown. But I thought that was a very telling quote from Stephen Ross of what the organization really feels about Ryan Tannehill, and the respect that he does have within the organization. This question comes from Thomas. He says, "How much would you pay Jarvis Landry?" I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I would ever have. I don't know. I'd probably pay him a little bit more than Edelman. I think that would work, especially since how teams are now. I don't know if there's a team out there that's like, oh, I'm gonna overpay him by like $5 million. Well, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. This question also comes from Thomas. He says, "Is Zach Brown, DeMarcus Lawrence, and Nate Solder good pickups in this year's free agent class?" I love Zach Brown. I told everybody, I said Zach Brown's a great player. He's very fast. We're going to fast 40 times. Got great coverage skills. Sideline to sideline. Obviously, the reason he wasn't a Dolphin is because of his personality, and I don't think that's going to change. I don't think the Dolphins are going to change their mind, even though he had a great year. I don't think that's happening. DeMarcus Lawrence is one of those guys that's like, is he a great player? Because I haven't seen him do it over a lot of, I haven't seen him do it for the last 4 years. Is he a player that's going to be consistent, or is he like a free agent bust where he gets his money and he's an okay player? Like, DeMarcus Lawrence had a great season. Like, he had a Von Miller type of a season. I just don't think he can do that on a consistent basis. So I don't like DeMarcus. I think he's too much of a risk. Nate Solder, older. I don't think we need I think we need more of an interior guy. I think there are other, Andrew Norwell, who was first team All-Pro this year. He's a free agent. There's a lot of really good guards that are free agents. I think it's actually, just because of Andrew, I think collectively it's probably a better guard class than it was last year. This question, all right, hang on, let's see here. This question comes from Ricky Ricardo. He says, "Which high-profile players do you think we could chase in free agency? Also, what are your thoughts on the latest coaching moves?" High-profile players in free agency. There's a lot of them that we don't know who are going to be free agents. But, players that Andrew Norwell, I think, would probably be the best. He's going to command a ton of cash because he's a first-team All-Pro player. I mean, the man is one of the best. He's been one of the better guards in the NFL since he got into the league. Like, he's a great player. And I watch him every Sunday because my brother's a Panthers fan. He really is a great player, and he killed us when we played him. So I think Andrew probably would be the number one. I guess he's not high profile, but he's a great player. Take Me Out says, "At Sue's current salary of around $26 million, I think they should cut ties if he's willing to restructure." Your thoughts? It's hard to say yes because he's such a great player. I think, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think he. People are like, oh, he's not willing to restructure. I think he will be, and if he's not, it's hard to say. I would say it's hard to say. It's a very difficult decision. This question comes from David. He says, "Skaggs, every single list I checked that had the 2017 team's strengths of schedule have the Raiders at 4, are close there, and we're at 6, so we had a weaker schedule. Why then is the Raiders picking before us?" Picking before us. Are they picking before us? They beat us too, and I'm pretty sure we finished with the same record. So that's very interesting. That's a good question, David. That's a very good question. Are the Raiders picking before us? I would have to go back and direct the draft order. I know we're 11. That is weird. I don't know. That's a great question. Somebody else can hopefully can answer that one. That's a little weird. That's very interesting. Antoine Jesse, should the Dolphins move Jesse Davis to right tackle and get rid of Juwan James to save money? Again, that's another DeMarcus Lawrence situation where like, do I know that he can do it for a long time? Or do I think that was just an aberration? I don't know. I want to keep Juwan James, but again, that's a whole nother getting into the weeds of, oh, well, Jarvis is also a free agent, so what are you going to do with him? You can't pay Juwan all this cash, cap space, all that other stuff. You can't go out and get a guard because of that, so we're very limited to what we can do right now. Ronald says the Dolphins just added 2 new coaches to the staff. And oh, yeah, I forgot to answer the other half of the other question. Are these 2 going to be the only additions? If not, who else do you see them adding, and for what roles? Oh, yeah, I'm going to answer, because I don't think they are going to add any more. To answer your question from just like a straight up, to be real, I don't think they're adding anything else. But, so what do I think of the 2 coaches? Washburn, I love Washburn, and I thought he was a huge loss, and I think he's going to be a great coach for us in the future. He was a great coach when he was on the staff in 2016. I love him to death. The players cannot stop talking about him when he was on the staff, so I love him. I think he's a great coach. Dialogue, I just don't think... I think he brings a creativeness to this offense, and maybe he can help polish some of the details and help Adam Gase's message a little bit more, and maybe take some more pressure off of him. Because, you know, Clyde is an older coach who didn't work with Adam before. Even though they had some of the same values, he really doesn't know what Adam wants, even though they've worked for 2 years together. It's not like they're on the same wavelength or have the same chemistry that a Loggins would have. So I think that's going to help us with some of the scheme issues that we've had with some of the other players. I think he can help polish and add and be a little bit more creative with some of those things, because that's some of the things that he showed in Chicago. The thing that I'm most excited about with this hire is that Dial is a very creative guy. You know, some of the coolest plays that he drew up that this last season, because it's 2018 now, or it's still this season technically, but won them games. Like the Mitchell Trubisky, I think that was a 2-point conversion, the Tyreek Hill touchdown in the Ravens game, all of those games. Those are like big plays, and they were well-designed plays. So I think he's going to bring a creativeness to this offense and some new life, which I think is going to be good. And like I said, I don't think the Dolphins are going to add anybody, but who do I think they should add? Pagano. I think Chuck Pagano is a great coach. Like, really, the roster that this man had with the Colts, and they were in so many games this season. Are you kidding me? I think he's a great coach. I think he's probably going to be the Baltimore Ravens defensive coordinator, but if seriously, I love him to death. I think he's a great coach. If he wants to come over to Miami, he can come over any day of the week. He is a great coach. Great coach. He comes from that Bruce Arians, like, rich coaching background, and he's just a great coach. And he understands defense, too. So if I had to choose somebody that I would love to have on the staff, it would be him. It's very similar to Wade Phillips. Like, Wade is such a good coach that it helps Sean McVay. Colin, this question comes from Colin Klein. He says, would you rather take Quentin Nelson, the second coming of Zach Martin, round 1, to bolster the line, and taking Tremaine Edmonds in round 2? I would love that. There's not a lot of scenarios that I wouldn't love, because I love a lot of the players in this draft. I really do. I'm not even joking around. I love a lot of them, and I would not mind that. I would be very happy with Quentin Nelson. I think we need a physical presence on that offensive line desperately, and we just get pushed around in the running game. So having him would be huge, and Edmonds would be good, not a bad one either. So yeah, I would not be opposed. So it looks like we have we'll answer this one quick because this is a good one. Should we sign Jimmy Graham in free agency instead of burning a second round pick on Mark Andrews? No, I actually like Mark a lot. I think he's a great player, and I think he's more durable than Jimmy, and obviously he's got a lot more years ahead of him. I like Mark a lot. The Patriots love him from some reports that I've heard, so hopefully they don't get their hands on him with that two-headed monster with Gronk. So I would love Mark. that is the end of this podcast. We went through a lot of things. I think there's a lot to discuss from some of these reports, and if you read the tea leaves, it seems to me like the Dolphins are, maybe I'm looking too into it, but I think the Dolphins are willing and ready to do something drastic this offseason, and in particular in the draft. Usually it's free agency with us. I think this year it's going to be the draft. I think we're going to make a bold move in this draft, and I'm excited to see what that bold move looks like. So the last time we really did it was Deion Jordan, when we traded up all the way up to 3, and that was obviously a disappointment. Hopefully this time we do the right thing. So I am Skaggs1583. I will see you guys in the next one. If the Dolphins do make a drastic move in the draft, what will it be? And I will see you guys in the next one.